Okay, well, look, I think we'll get started. So, welcome everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this, our third session in the Future Ready Accounting Firms series presented by Boma in the back room. Today, we're diving into the growth equation. That's how accounting firms are freeing up time, boosting capacity, and shifting focus towards a more advisory led firm, and that's by combining both automation and offshoring. Now, before I hand over to Ian and Scott, I'm just going to launch a quick poll, and that will be about your biggest growth constraint at the moment. So if you can bear with me, I'll just launch the poll now. If you can just take a few seconds to answer that, that'd be fantastic. And then Ian, I'll hand over to you.
Perfect. Should we just wait for those two?
Oh, yeah, coming in, some good answers.
Mm.
It seems to have launched both polls at the same time, so don't worry about the second question. What's the first thing you'll implement from today? That was actually meant to be at the end. It seems to have done it first. So just focus on the biggest growth constraint, and then at the end you can answer what is the first thing you'll implement from today. Cool. Look, while people are taking a minute to do that, Ian, do you want to
Sure, I'll do the introduction. How's that
yeah.
sound? So, my uh, slide. Whoa. So I'm Ian Christie, founder and CEO of Boma, and joined here by Scott Findlay. And Scott will be able to tell a little bit about himself in a second because he's got some exciting pieces of information which I know you'll love to hear from his particular view of the world. Just a little bit about Boma. We're a growth engine, a digital growth engine designed specifically for accountants, and we provide content to help you on your advisory journey. And we've also got an automated part in our platform, which means that you don't have to spend hours and hours on marketing. You can just spend a few minutes and get the same result. Scott.
Thanks, Ian. I'll just look at these poll results. Yeah, it is quite interesting. 57% so far
Hmm.
is time. So anyway, I'm Scott Findlay, one of the co-founders of the Backroom. It's me and it's myself and my brother, the big fella, Colin Wayne, who's also the CEO. So our firm is our company is based in the Philippines, where all our staff are. So we're what we call an offshoring company, and we've got a bunch of Philippine-based people working for Australia, New Zealand, and USA, and across the world, really. And majority of those are doing accounting work, but also other stuff. So that's a bit about us.
And can you see other poll results showing?
Yes,
Yes.
I can see them, Charles. I can at the moment. 29% is around it's around talent,
Mm,
14% is tools, and time again still at 57% is the biggest
mm.
constraint.
Mm, fantastic.
Okay. Um, so, uh, so firstly, we've got Scott talking about the industry reality.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. Look, some of the stuff we all know, we all know, but sometimes you see it and you see it, it's right in front of you, but you don't realize it. But the old model of growth doesn't scale anymore. Look, we've got major talent shortage, and recruitment delays. You've even got you've got lack of people coming through universities. You've even got schools, career advisors, not giving us accountants such a big plus, you could say. There's too much work for too fewer people, just busyness, and a lot of busyness out there. There's even more of a rising demand for advisory services. Um, we all back in the day, it was sort of like when you saw in the ledger under professional services, a big expense for professional services, and that's sort of what occurred to you then. Perhaps I should be doing that when you see someone else doing it, and you realise, hey, you know your clients better than anyone else, and now it's even more so the case where they really do need it. And on top of all that, there's margin pressure, and as a result, burnout.
Mm. And so if I take the growth equation into the advisory context from our point of view of the world, is that one of the easiest pathways to advisory growth is actually visibility. So a lot of you know exactly what the big issues for your clients are. The same issues keep cropping up time and time again. But the ability to actually tell that story is very difficult. And so by being visible, so that is out there in your LinkedIn world and your social media, and actually talking about these these aspects of what it takes to actually understand the challenges around growth for a small business. Um, Unless you can start to tell that story and tell it consistently, that pathway to growth will be a lot steeper. And as we just saw in that poll, um, it's the bandwidth that is the lacking piece. And as Scott was saying, is that with fewer graduates coming through, getting on to into the accounting profession, there's no lack of intent. It's effectively just how do I fit all this in? How do I do this? How do I service my clients? And how do I also go out and tell the world that advisory is something that I want to be known for? Well, the answer for that is to rely more about automation. And as I mentioned at the start in the intro, um, automating your marketing is actually now really simple to do with the tools that are there. And you don't have to be an expert and you don't have to actually have a lot of the marketing smarts. Effectively, the automation is your friend. So automation is your friend, obviously, in all of the general ledger work that you do. And so effectively, using a marketing platform to automate that side of it is the fastest way to get to that growth. And an aspect that Scott was talking about was that if you further protect and sustain that consistency by using offshore
Mm,
people, that means that you can then actually start to not only enjoy the benefits of automation, but also have an optimized cost in your staffing that can drive all that automation as well.
totally. And I'd like to just add to that, even, in regard to around balancing talent, tools, and time. When any part of that is out of balance, capacity stalls, and advisory becomes more reactive. And so that's when you want that alignment enables you to scale and just have clarity.
Yes.
Um, and also further to that, it's strategized. It's something that you really have to strategize.
Yes, exactly, exactly. Now, I'm going to have to make an admission here that I'm actually using some slightly different slides than I had intended to because of all of this automation here. So, a couple of the things we're going to mix it up a bit, but effectively the what we're going to say is there, but and the intent will be there, but some of the slides, just as a warning, Scott, might be slightly different to what we just had
I think
on.
it's pretty.
But
They're pretty close, near enough.
yeah, yeah. So effectively, if we go back and say, okay, there are some barriers there. And then we talk about where do these firms get stuck? So where do they get stuck in trying to get out and talk about what they can really do? And look, you guys know all this as well, but I just wanted to sort of lay it out in pretty sort of simple terms. Is that, firstly, we have that sort of billable hour paradox, where the traditional hourly model financially actually penalizes efficiency. So when you're actually so efficient, you're not out there billing as much because a lot of the work that you're doing is being automated. Um, Doing marketing feels like you're actually, it's lost revenue. Where so that's one of those paradoxes that I kind of think is more of a headspace thing than anything else. There's also a trust and risk barrier because, look, I know that you guys are not so much skeptics, but you're very objective about things. And often people view marketing or even just getting out there and telling their story um, as sometimes a little risky, and it's something I'm not used to doing, so maybe I shouldn't do it. And then is obviously the capacity issue that we've just mentioned a couple of times, is that I just don't have the bandwidth, as we saw in the poll, for that. So that's a kind of really classical, I'm stuck in this billable hour, risk and capacity sort of vortex, really. So how can you create that scale? So building a bridge to advisory is the key to all of this. And we profess to say that the bridge to advisory is fundamentally telling people that you actually do it and telling them about experiences that you have and things that you've done or points of view that you work through that actually um, that set out effectively the things that you know to be true and that they will accept as a piece of experience that they want to know more about. Because
Actually, Ian,
yeah,
if I can interrupt there
yeah,
too on that
sure.
one, using a bit of the old Mark, bit of Mark Jenkins from the Gap, he always talks. It's even ethically wrong
Hmm.
as accountants that we aren't doing it in some
Yes,
ways. Yeah.
yes, yes. Well, there you go. That's the thing, is that actually you can say that there are a lot of small businesses, and I always look on accountants as the small business superheroes. They're the guys who
Hmm.
and girls who are really helping these small businesses not in some cases not just prosper, but just survive. And so the authority that you can have is from those skills that within in your practice. And I talked about this in a previous webinar. It's incredible if you actually looked inwards for a moment and thought about the things that are really more common to your practice in the sense of the type of client that you might have and the type of challenges that they might have, that actually you can start to build around that because the answers are actually there. You're not reinventing anything, you're not making anything up that doesn't exist. You're actually just reflecting out the sorts of things that you're doing on an everyday basis. All you're doing is putting some structure around that, creating some narratives around them, and getting those out into the marketplace. Another thing that there's a byproduct of getting your advisory story out there is actually attracting talent. And very simply, a lot of young people, as soon as they see a job opening or a posting, the first thing they'll do is go probably onto social media, not LinkedIn. They'll go onto social media and they'll check out your company. And if you don't have a profile or you have a dormant profile that hasn't been touched for quite some time, that to them is a massive turnoff. And so, therefore, being able to actually not only tell your advisory story, but tell it in places where these younger graduates or recruits are, makes a significant difference in your ability to hire. So then, and you can also create scale by using additional tools. And of course, we would put Boma in as part of that, where you have a universal tool that does all of that marketing for you. So effectively, automation will solve all of those things if you're able to harness those tools properly. And again, it's not a massive time suck, but the profile you build is going to be disproportionate to in the sense of its impact to the time that you've put in. So it is a really, really good investment.
Yeah, thanks, Ian, and a bit about the talent side of things, and it's a bit of the obvious. Everyone knows about this, but recruiting locally is harder and slower. And when we talk about talent, that this isn't a cost play; it's a capability play. So as we know, it's getting harder and harder to recruit. I hear it every day. I was talking to just got an email this morning about someone who's just struggling to get. I think it was a manager's role in their firm. So all these roles are difficult to do. Costs are rising, um, and admittedly, look, I'll be honest, costs are rising on from our end as well. But they're all still there's the costs of if you compare it with cost of offshoring with cost of locally, there's still definitely an ROI around that side of it. So firms need scalable capacity. Um, you know, it's just not there at the moment, and what we've talked about before. Um, and when you look at offshoring is now mainstream in accounting. So essentially, it's one of the obvious choices to cut, to create that capacity. One thing I've always talked about is you've got the right staff. You've actually got the right staff there. It's just doing more with what you've got, and it's bringing in. And I always like to talk about building a team. Sure, we can. I've talked about this before in this webinar. You can plug gaps, and that's the nice way to start it, to dip your toes. But again, what we're talking about here, to get everything tuned in and well, is to strategize it, to build your team, to look at your talent in a different way, and make sure you got those local positions right. But then to really build it and to maximize it is by looking at other ways, and offshoring is certainly one of them. You just flick the next slide here. Why is offshore and why is offshore exploding? Well, if you talked about this sort of 12 years ago, there would have been quite a few more barriers around offshoring. The talent shortage isn't going to go away. Offshoring, as I talked about before, it's a strategic move. And again, not so much about plugging holes. It's about building a team, not a last resort. Why is it accelerating in accounting? Well, it's obviously capacity, cost, and now there's, if you're with the right firms, doing the right things, you get a really good retention. What great firms are doing differently when they're talking about offshoring teams, there's lots of different ways to do it. I talk about the four pillars, just on the basic side of it. The first one is obviously cloud-based. You have cloud-based software. The second one, and we talk about that later, is systems and processes. Very, very important. The next one is great communication. And the last one is just having that right mindset. Not to be of the, I talk about, and I'm nearly one of the sort of old boomers in the corner. and straight away who's doing churning out all those accounts for you. Suddenly you throw them one of your staff in the Philippines. Is that going to work well? No, that's not going to work very well. So you've got to strategize it. You've got to sort of implement it the right way. You know, a lot of people are using grads now. A lot of people will be doing, they'll have their offshoring firm will have their own training. So they'll introduce that, use that first, and then they'll take their team through their own grad intake as well. So it's about time. It's about having systems and sort of, you know, and every firm should have systems anyway to really make it work. The other thing we sort of forget about, and we get a bit narrow, put the blinkers on around offshoring and especially the roles, is we aren't just talking about your standard 2 to 4 year experienced accountant jumping in is going to rolling, you know, drafting accounts. So like for at the back room, for instance, we're probably about 80, I think I talked about this before, about 80% of our staff are accounting based, but then there's 20% of other. But let's be honest, we're talking, you know, we can do admin support, marketing services, from working with Boma, with Ian's team. It was even the other thing to think about too is some of your existing clients, what they need. So it's always nice to be able to help them out if they're short on sort of architecture type people or even engineering roles, marketing, legal, and customer services roles. So there's a raft of different roles that can be offshored. Back to accounting though, to help you, sure, accounting, bookkeepers, they're going to be great, but don't forget about admin. And it's the same as when you're dealing with your accounting team. You've got a real strong admin team, but they're still busy and they should be doing more for you. You know, I always talk about in accounting firms, you always need a doer. I know Wayne and I had our person who was fantastic. She got things done. You want to free that person up. So you don't want them to doing the manual administration stuff. So more and more now we're building a team, and it could be 4 accountants, it could be 2 bookkeepers, and it could be 2 admin people. Let alone we talk about VAs or virtual assistants for accountants or directors. And that's another story. I could leave that. We might have to have another session on that, but that can sort of be great help as well. Yeah, and so also quality comes from structure and not geography. So that's just in the name itself. That's pretty cool. So we need clear SOPs, and I talked about that before, consistency around workflow. So processes, standard operating procedures are so important to make it work. You know, staff love to tick boxes. It's great for your firm anyway to have these put in place. If you haven't got them all there already, I often talk about maybe your first hire. That's one of their jobs is when you're working with them, you straight away you build work with them to get your systems and processes going. Daily check-ins. So that's really, really important. Keeps things going within your team. Using Slack, using Teams, or anything else that you're using. Video walkthroughs with Loom. You know, even down to a bit of detail. So you've just got a new client, or you've got a new set of financial accounts. The accountant that's managing that can do a quick Loom video, attach that to the folder that it's with, you know, whether that's in Google or with whatever you're using. So your offshore team can straight away have something to refer back to. And it could be simply, this is LMV electrical, should be the same as last year if you check through the work papers. You know, have a look at that. It looks like they bought a truck, so check for the HP agreements, etc. And the other side of it is shared tasks and management tools. Have good, you know, when we talk about good technology, really helps. Automation, your people in your offshoring team managing that automation and those management tools. And good, you want eyes on. You know, I often talk to a lot of our clients. Sure, your offshoring company will give you some information, but you're still going to have to run them on timesheets. You still want to be able to see that process of jobs going through. Again, good systems. Yeah, how offshoring doubled our advisory output. Yeah, we've got plenty. Look, I don't want to talk too much about the back room, but there's a lot of our clients that have seen this, um, where firms have essentially gone through a real simple process of added offshore accountants. We're big on, we believe a lot in using grads, low cost, clean sheet of paper, and they sort of come into your team and grow with your team at the same times. Straight away by doing this, it's like having an efficient team sitting below your accountants. And I hear it all the time, about the team that they can't review, or they can't manage these people. But a couple of things: you make them do it. You train them and you make them do it, or you have to silo them out the side, and you still get the right people on the bus that can actually work with your team. So you create a team underneath your accountants. Your accountants suddenly become reviewers, and they can actually, even, believe it or not, they can also interview clients and even do tax meetings. They probably do a better job than a lot of the partners. So by doing that, this is just one example. Suddenly your partners just reclaim lots of hours, reclaim lots of time, and then straight away, what do we do with that time? Well, let's do the obvious thing. Let's do some advisory work. We haven't been doing it before because we talked about it before. We're too stressed out. We didn't have the time. And suddenly we can get the good things come out of that. You can start getting into those higher charge out rates. The other thing that we kind of forget about is giving the partners that bit of time to get into what I call the black zone, to look at strategically what they're doing. Why not look at, setting up a bookkeeping company, or a division in your team for bookkeeping? I think a lot of accountants even forget about that. Good sticky business. So suddenly you're now doing the bookkeeping, you're now doing wages, now we're doing the drafting and tax of them. And guess what? You're now a real trusted advisor. Now you can get in and easily be able to go to them and say, look, we should be doing some business planning. We should be doing now quarterly reports, etc. Your onshore team that are doing this, they can again do more, because you've now got a effective team running in offshore, doing a lot of the repetitive, and they're going to, as things grow with AI and automation, they're going to be doing more as well. So they're going to be working with your team in locally, and from that straight away you're going to get a lot more out of your team, and also that just makes you're going to get more out of them, less stress. Yeah, it's just all good things. Yeah, and also better ROI. So what firms do with more time. I talked I talked a bit about it already in that last slide. But again, the obvious things: focus on advisory, talking to your clients, going out, and I'll say this all the time: setting up meetings when the job comes in, straight away. Just put in an appointment, for you to go out and see them out at their own business, out at their own workshop. They love it. So it really deepens client relationships. Then you can start to do some of this black zone stuff, strategic stuff. Look at some of the projects that you really want to work in. Be kind of commercial and be a wee bit out there. So the opportunity to free up time. Some of the best time you can have in your office is when you've got thinking time. What can I be doing next? Dare I say, if we didn't have any of this time, any of that sort of time, we probably wouldn't have started the back room. Ian wouldn't have started Boma. That's so powerful. Yeah, and and training and leadership, mentoring, and a lot of that stuff to building stronger teams is so important. And what you get out of it is better margins.
Mm. Mm.
And then we talk about all the really good stuff, what you really want, better client outcomes. You're going to get stickability. You're going to get clients staying with you. You're going to get all the good sort of KPIs coming out. You're going to get better turnaround times. You're going to get higher average fees for your clients. You're going to you're going to be able to cherry pick clients. Qualify clients a lot better. So you're going to get referrals from all your good clients saying the good things. Obviously, less stressed teams. Even going to put it out there, and quite a few of our clients are doing this. What happens when you free up time? You can work harder, or you can do the good things like this. Maybe 4-day weeks, maybe finishing at 3 o'clock. A lot of firms out there are doing it, but certainly you're going to get sustainable growth is one of the key things you've got to measure, and you can actually control it. And of course, out of that is more predictable workflows. So obviously, really awesome things that come out of it. I think we're both doing this one, Ian.
Yeah. Um,
But
I
I
think
can.
that
You can
what
start off. Yeah.
so what I think has been really great about what you've said is that, listening to you, it's that identification of bottlenecks, which actually doesn't happen so often because you are, so caught up in the day to day and you know what you want to do, but those bottlenecks are hanging around. And sometimes it's really good to be able to just go, you know what, I'm going to actually just try and synthesize these bottlenecks into sort of my top 5 things that I really believe continually I come up against or the practice comes up against, and how can we solve those? And Scott's talked a lot about how those can be solved by the offshoring strategy, and some of the things like time and skill set and breadth and depth of your team that actually comes as a result of that. I think that what, my main premise of this whole thing is that if you are short of time, but you really need to get into that advisory space, then use something like a tool like Boma that actually is able to automate what you want to say out in the world about your skills, about your team, about the things that you stand for or the things that you have an opinion on. And again, in the old days, just like Scott was talking about in the, doing the heavy lifting in the accounting world. In the old days, it was brief. In our world, brief someone to write you an article or a partner to write the article, and then find a graphic designer to make it look good, and then load it up into all of the social media channels. And you have to do a different format for every channel because they've all got different specs. And then you would have to then put it on your blog, on your website as a blog post, and then put it into a client email as well. All of this stuff takes time. And you can
Mm,
be sitting there doing it and thinking, not only is it costing me, a few $100s a week or even a couple of thousand a week to pay for this external resource to put this together, it's also taking up really valuable partner time in checking the content or writing the content and making sure that it's um, all okay, and then circulating it potentially amongst the team to make sure everyone is happy with it. All of that stuff goes away. You can
totally.
actually go into the library that we have. You can pick out something that you think really reflects the type of things that you stand for or the types of situations you commonly come across. And you can you can uh, take that content and make it your own. It's automatically branded. You just tell it where you want it to go, um, and as a web blog article, and just push a button, and Boma does it automatically for you. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that then, if you can really just harness this technology, which is, building that offshore capacity with the back room. You can start to standardize all your workflow, and then you can actually quite easily measure. And I just used a sort of an example before, but we have ROI calculators on marketing where you can actually put down what it would take you to do these things in the old analog way, let's call it. And you can see actually how much time and how much money potentially that costs. And then you match it up with an automated tool that can do the same thing, but for a fraction of the cost.
Can I just say, Ian, too, like I'm pretty, even back just about identifying your bottlenecks. It's a but I'll be honest, it's a frustration to me when I look at accountants now, and it's so important. We all know our bottlenecks, and I can, and back to say every accountant tells me the same story. We've got a bottleneck in review, and we're just talking compliance here. We've got a bottleneck around reviewing, and we've got a bottleneck around again just doing general annual accounts, and a lot of it's at that front end, and a lot of it's at information coming in, and I hear it all the time about when we talk about reviewing. These people, the start has to be partners have to review, can only be partners review, and I'm sorry, I certainly maybe a real old traditional firm who has got some very powerful ideas around quality. But I would still say there is no reason why, as a staff, you've got there. If you've got that stuff, sometimes if you're a sole trader, you haven't got it. It's not there. But if you've got, you know, or if you've got 1 to 10 or whatever amount of accountants, you've got a bunch of people that you train them. They can do reviewing, free up. That's going to free up the partner. How do they get time to the reviewing? Then they've got their team underneath them that are doing the drafting of the accounts, working close with them. So that's, it can happen. And it's just you tell them and you train them how to do it. And the other bottleneck at that front end, and we split it out in our firm down to prep one, prep two, and then you had drafting and reviewing. So prep one was information, and essentially prep two was doing the work papers. There is a big bottleneck of accountants, well-trained accountants, on high salaries doing work papers and setting up reports, which is essentially a bookkeeping role in a way. It's grabbing information from the IRD or wherever and putting it into work papers. So that's a classic case where they, high experienced people, where they could be used better in such a better part of their firm than what they're doing now. Anyway, I'll I'll let you flick on. I get a bit sometimes we're a bit passionate about some of that stuff.
That's good. We love passion. Um, so we have another session, which is basically building that marketing engine that runs itself. What I was talking about. What are the component parts that you can put together? How can you tell those stories? Where do you get the stories from? What stories resonate? How do you get that media mix together that gives you the best impact? And how do you know when you're being successful? So that's effectively what we're going to cover in the next session. Um, and we have got um, a, a strategy call that we're happy to put together for you, where there's a free 30-minute consultation that we can look at your marketing and engagement approach, staffing and capacity opportunities. Scott can cover that, and then we can look at some of those automation or efficiency gaps. And so, what will come out of that is that we can recommend some marketing activities using Boma. Scott can suggest some staffing roles via TBR, and then you'll get a 3-month priority growth plan that you can follow. So that's effective. So it's a very good use of 30 minutes to carry on the
Um,
time thing.
Ian, I'll interrupt you. I think we've got one question here that I probably should answer. I see, and I
Yes.
don't think you can see it from your side. How do I know how many? It's to be honest, it's directed at me. How do I know how many of my team need to be offshored and how many I should keep onshore? Just very, very quickly, because I know we're running out of time. Look, that, I it really does all depend. It all depends to have a good look at what your current onshore team is at the moment. But I would basically say don't overthink it. Us accountants overthink it. Dip your toes. As much as I talk about want to build teams, but just try it with two. You can start off with an intermediate and a grad. And look, I'm not trying to get overdo it because but then ultimately in our accounting firm we worked on a ratio of one one offshore team member to about 1.5 onshore, and that varies. And I've got firms that are doing it pretty close to that, around about that. Some are 1 to 1. So where they're essentially running kind of like old days, a bit like the assistant accountant. There's no right or wrong answer to that, but it was a good question.
Great. So we've had the questions, but so we talked about the webinar that's coming up next time. That's on February 25. And as we mentioned, there is the free backroom and Boma strategy call. There's no obligation to chat. It's just a chat basically. So it's something that, again, it's an extension of the webinar. If you want to chat through something, we're very happy to help you. And also, I think the survey was probably as it went up together that that next question, which was what was the first thing you'll implement from today, I think had been answered. But if you could just answer that question, what is something that you would implement from today? If you could put the answer in the chat, it'd be great. And lastly, there's a 30-second exit survey at the end of this as well. And if you've got the time, it'd be great for you to fill that out. So thank you very much for your time. Really, really enjoyed the session and hopefully gave you a lot of food for thought. So, as I say, anything else you want to know, please feel free to reach out to Scott or myself, and we'd be happy to help or just chat.
Definitely. Thanks, Ian.
Thank you.
Yeah, I concur what you're saying. Yeah, it's good. It's great, and I kind of like when we can sort of ad lib it a wee bit in some cases there, Ian, and 'cause it's just subjects that we've dealt with for the last sort of 20 odd years.
Exactly.
Cool.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.